Okay. Sorry. I'm up here. Yeah, I know. It's communication. Exactly. Wasn't too sure on that one. Wonderful to be here. It's been 4 years. 4 years since we've been here, and it seems like yesterday, but in another part to that, it seems a long time ago. So it's wonderful to be here. Thank you. I'll put a picture up here. As you can see, we go back a long way on this one. This is when we first were dating, and this is in Limerick, Ireland. And at the time, we'd just met each other. The book of Romans, as we know, that God causes all things to work together for the good of those who love the Lord and those who are called according to his purpose. And God is the master. The word works together is a beautiful word because we get the word synergy. To bring together, synergize. And I don't know if you've ever cut a nylon rope. Some of the guys might have cut a nylon rope, but the nylon rope, if you cut it, it just frays. And sometimes life is like that. Sometimes I feel my life is a bit like the nylon rope, it's starting to fray. But God has a way with all of us to burn it off and to bring it together. And I think that's been true of my life and Melinda's life. God's constantly working, and we're seeing him constantly work in our lives as he is in your life to this very day. So what we're going to do tonight, we're just going to go a little bit to the past because some of you don't know us, so that we can proceed into the future, if that's okay, all right? We don't want to be too long in the past, but we do need to catch that to go forward. So this is Melinda here. She had a situation where she broke up from a boyfriend in West Texas. She thought they were going to get married, and she decided to decline that, to walk away from that relationship. And when she went to, she joined a team from Harding and ACU, and they went to the place called Limerick, Ireland. And she probably wasn't expecting this Kiwi guy, New Zealanders are called Kiwis, okay, to come on through. And guess what happened? I came through and we met up, and we'll just tell a little bit about that in a moment here. So I was raised on a sheep farm. There's me and my dogs. My brothers, I had 2 older brothers, we all had dogs, and we had 2,700 sheep. So that's a lot of sheep. And you've got to look after those sheep, and you've got to run. My father was a very, very good sheep farmer. And he made sure that we looked after the dogs and looked after especially his sheep. The dogs were never to bite the sheep at all, and so they were well trained. These dogs here all have different purposes. If you've worked sheep or cattle, and we had cattle too, we had 150 head of cattle, we made sure that these dogs learnt not to bite the sheep. This little Rocky down here, he was my 3-legged dog. He only had 3 legs, but he was my most hardest working dog, little Rocky. And so when I see that picture, it reminds me of him many, many years ago. We had a wonderful upbringing. There's my brother. I tried to get a bit of a picture where we have all the sheep in the background. But this is our farm. Very beautiful farm, very green, luscious. Very productive farm. And so we grew up on this farm, but we were like 90% of New Zealanders. We didn't worship God, didn't go to church. 90% of New Zealanders don't go to church. And it's kind of sad because in many ways that's affected our culture to this day. This is the home that I grew up on. You can see how green it is. And we had a wonderful upbringing. Farming was booming. Sheep farming was booming. My father built 2 holiday houses, one beside the ocean. So we could go fishing at the ocean and on the beach, and we could go to the lake. So we had to go to the lake as well. So we could have the choice of 2 because farming was doing so well at that particular time. It's amazing how God causes, and it says here that God causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and God causes the rain to rise, basically to fall on the righteous and the unrighteous. God looked after us despite. And what's interesting, when I was just a small boy, and here I am 12 years old here, my father would come and pray with me. He didn't pray with my siblings, but he prayed with me. And he'd ask me sometimes, would you like to do the Lord's Prayer? And I'd do the Lord's Prayer and so forth. And that was a time when God was being instilled into my heart at that time. At the same time this was happening, we had a Bible and schools teacher. For 1 week, for 1 hour a week, a lady is allowed to go into our public schools and teach Bible. And so this lady would come in and she was teaching about Jesus. And I heard the story about Jesus as a 12-year-old. So when I went off to, and here's God causing all things together. When I went off to boarding school, I didn't like boarding school. But my brothers went there. I went off to boarding school at the age of 12. I saw my family twice a year. Don't know why I went to boarding school. But we did. My brothers went there, my father went there, and we went off to Scots College, a Presbyterian school. So, while I was at boarding school, I did a lot of praying because my father's prayer came into action, that history that I'd had with my father. He said to me, what are you going to do when you leave? What would you like to do? I said, well, I'm going to be a sheep farmer. So he said, rightio, I'm going to send you to Drysdale Station, a 9,500 acre station. And Drysdale is very steep. You can see the sheep in the background. If you look there, you'll see them just going over the hill. We had around probably about 12 to 14,000 sheep on the station. Very steep. And my job was a shepherd, mustering sheep off those steep hills into the valleys and bringing them in to be dosed and sheared. I put this verse up here because later on, though I was tending sheep back there, one day I would tend God's sheep. Little did I know that down the line. When I left shepherding and got in and was a car salesman for a while, and then one day I had my friend who approached me, said, why don't we buy a business? And we brought a food business, and this food business took off. And we would basically bury our money. We were earning about, at the time, for 20-year-olds, we were earning around about $300,000, today's equivalent, $300,000 each a year at the age of 20. And so what we would do with the money, we kind of decided that we would stash the cash in jars in the ground, and we would have a string line to make sure we didn't lose them. And we had this little big row of jars in the ground, and we thought, well, what are we going to do with this? And so he said, why don't we travel? And so we ended up traveling for 3 years around the world. And the first port of call, guess where it was? It was America, the US. And I think God was pulling us away from my culture so that I would hear the gospel. Because if I stayed in my culture and the world that I was in, I would have never heard the gospel. So he brought me to America. I began to travel around America. And as I'm traveling, I'm meeting different religious people. And I decided one day I'd go into a Christian bookshop, and I brought a Bible. My friend didn't like this, that I'd buy a Bible, because I was starting to get religious on him, you see. And so I'd read this Bible, and as I would travel around, I'd start to visit various churches, especially as I traveled through the South. Never visited Church of Christ. Visited Baptist, Pentecostal, Brethren, different groups, until we got over here. And I'm going down the Ventura Highway. Some of you might remember the group called America, and they called the Ventura Highway song, and that's what I was. I was coming down the Ventura Highway. Little did I know, a matter of hours, that I'd become a Christian. I call it my homecoming. And so we pulled in there one night. I said to Andy, I'm going to go and find another church. And he was upset with me because we had one car at that time. And he said, what am I going to do? I said, why don't you drive around for a while, come back, and you can pick me up after the service. And so we got lost. And as we're coming around, we saw the Anacapa Church of Christ down a back street. Pulled up right outside it. I'm at this stage about 21, 22. And there at the entrance were these 5 pretty blonde-haired Californian girls. And I thought, well, this is pretty good. If this is church, I think I like this. And so they said, come on in. And they said, would your friend like to come too? I said, I'm not sure about him. So I said, let me just go and ask him. So I tapped on the window. I said, would you like to come in? And of course, Andy locked up that door real fast on that car and came on in too. God had a plan for Andy as well. The next night, that night, they took us out for an ice cream and so forth, and they had some keys, and they gave us the keys and says, here's the keys to the building. You can use it as long as you want. It's all there for you to use. We ended up staying 3 months in that church building. The next night, they had a study on Ezekiel. And I said, at the end of the study, I said to my friend Andy, I said, they mentioned about baptism in the middle of Ezekiel, and you don't find that in Ezekiel, you know. And I went up to him and I said, what's this about baptism? And 5 men converged on us and said, let's go and have a little talk. So we were ushered down to the back room, and 11:15 that night, Max, the preacher, asked me, Chris, he says, what are you going to do about this? And I said, I want to respond to the gospel. And that night at 11:15, I responded. And not only did I respond, but Andy responded too to the gospel. And he's still faithful to this day as well. So that was a major change in our life. And we ended up staying there, and God drew us away at that time to do that. We ended up staying there. And this is us, by the way, leaving that church. They put on a hobo party for us. And, we had a lovely send-off because they were sending us out. Couple of things that I think I learned from that church, and I think we need to imbibe ourselves, and that is this. They showed us true love. The love that got us in there kept us in there. And we need to make sure that anybody who comes into our proximics needs to experience the love of Jesus. We need to show them that love. The other thing is they showed us true hospitality. We walked in looking like it was stepped out of Woodstock, you know. And yet they embraced us and loved us. Very important to do. They taught us how to study the Word. On a Tuesday night and on a Thursday night, they would get together and they'd come around and study with us because they knew that we would be moving shortly. And then they did this final thing. They taught us to pass our faith forward. And wherever we went, we did that. And so we would travel. We went off to Europe and traveled around our Volkswagen camper van. And we traveled around Europe. And as we went, we would study with people. Ended up baptizing a lady. We met one lady in a restaurant in London, baptized her, and she ended up baptizing the rest of her family. That little dot over there is Ireland. That's where I met Melinda. We were traveling in a Volkswagen camper van, and we turned up in a place called Limerick. And here is Melinda, and I put the coat up here because Melinda's wearing this coat. This particular night after the Bible study, this little home group that they'd started, Melinda was leaving and she got her coat caught on the rose bush. And, I kind of watched this girl on the other side of the room all night, but not knowing exactly how to approach this until the rose bush caught her. And I untwined her coat, and of course, we started chatting, and so 2.5 years later, we ended up getting married. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? Took the rose bush to do that. And so our mission and our heart, she was over there because she was wanting to reach people, and my heart is trying to reach people, and we wanted to make sure that we were going to do this in our life. And so we have dedicated ourselves to the last 40 years of this now. It's been 40 years. This is us leaving when we left Cherokee Hills in Oklahoma City, and of course to this very day, 40 years on. We've been very blessed. We work down in the South Pacific in a place called New Zealand, which is down there. There's 42 million people in the South Pacific. It's known as the Forgotten Frontier. It's a liquid continent. And this is where we park. We live in here. We live in a place. By the way, this is the size of New Zealand, roughly till you see your eastern states. Gives you a bit of an idea of it. Made up of really 2 major islands, with Stewart Island, the bottom island at the very base. We're one of the closest countries, us and Argentina, to the Antarctic. So we're we're a long way south, you might say. We live in a place called Tauranga, which is in this little scoop up here. Beautiful area, sort of a subtropical climate. We don't get frosts, so it's very mild in that way. So it allows us to have flowers growing all year round, which is really lovely to have that. We do the hongi, and I've done that before. When we do a greeting with the Maori, this is the native people, we do a hongi, and a hongi is basically a greeting. And what you're doing when they do a hongi, you're breathing life, you're giving your life into the life of that person, and they're giving life back, and that's why they do it, touching of the noses. Very beautiful country, New Zealand. One of the countries of the world. I've been to now 37 countries, and I'd say New Zealand, I'd have to say it, is one of the top on the list. We live in the Bay of Plenty. This is what we grow, a lot of horticulture. And if you came into New Zealand, came into our bay, you'd see these orchards and beautiful beaches, and you can see the islands and so forth. Very, very picturesque place to live. My family, this is my son-in-law, my daughter Abby, my daughter Keris and Ethan, myself, and then I've got over here my daughter-in-law, my other son, and my eldest son, and Angelique on the far end there. Just to let you know, my eldest son right now has taken a mission boat. He's the captain of this. They have about 50 people on board. They have doctors, nurses, and Angelique's running the doctors and nurses and dentists. So they're going up into the remote areas of the Pacific, into the Fiji Islands and beyond, and those really remote islands where there's no medical care. And so he's taken this ship up with all these medical people on to do this medical work. And that's his heart. He's trying to help these people up in this region. My daughter Abby lives in California. She lives in a place called Huntington Beach. And this is her eldest daughter here, has just graduated this year. And we were thrilled to be able to see that. When Jason came over 2 years ago, or just before, should I say 3 years ago, he wanted to study baptism again with me. He'd been baptized, but he said, I want to restudy it with you. And he decided that he wanted to get rebaptized. And so I was really thrilled to baptize my son-in-law into Christ. I've had the the blessing of studying with my grandchildren. This is my youngest one, Indy. We'd been studying at the beginning of the year, and as we were studying, she got to the point, she said, Granddad, when are you going to baptize me? I'm ready to be baptized. I said, well, sometime, and we had to keep putting her off because we couldn't get over here, you see. And then one day we kind of moved and flew in, and she didn't even know we're moving in, and we flew in, and of course we had the joy of baptizing Indiana into Christ. So I'm thrilled to see her growing. This is my son. He's a school teacher. Angelique is a musician. She's got some of you have got Spotify. You look up Georgia Lyons, and you'll pick up her music. It's going worldwide at the moment. Very, very good musician. And of course, one of the things I do is enjoy fishing. I don't know if we have any fishermen here, but I'm a fisherman. I love going fishing. So do my sons. And so we go out and we catch. This is a red snapper, by the way. Big fish. We have this mountain here right at the entrance of our harbour called the Mount Maunganui, and I've named it my ministry as Mount Ministries. It basically has 3 arms, and the first arm is here, is Totemotai. This is our congregation. It fluctuates. It's about anything from 60 to 75 in size. It has a lot of different ethnic groups a part of it. During the COVID period, they decided that they want to have an eldership. And so my name came forth, and so I accepted that to be an elder. So I'm presently an elder. You'll notice the little cake up here to the top right-hand side. Those are all sheep. And you notice to the side here, the kids all looking at those sheep. They're ready to eat them, you see. And then they wanted not only to eat the sheep, but if you see the elders, the 3 elders up there, they wanted to eat the elders as well, of course, you know. And a part of my role is naturally praying for the flock. We have a lot of children. We have 26 children in our little congregation, so that keeps us busy. We like to picnic because we have a mild climate. We don't get into the heat like you do, 107 today, I gather. We get up to about in the low 80s, and that's a nice day for us. So it's very mild. It means we can go to the park, and we'll have picnics at the park. We open up our home, and this is a couple from New Guinea that are going through our South Pacific Bible College. And presently, they graduated, but we like to have people in our home. And Melinda's very good at this. I like to mentor some of the young men, and they come round and we have a barbecue and some guys' time. Melinda has days when they organise a Saturday where they have Ladies' Day, and they come in and they study the Word together. And we have, Melinda, we get a lot of couples coming from, this couple's from South Africa, had a baby, no parents, and so we take up that role and try and be the parents to these different ones that come in. I've just realised I've got to move over, otherwise I'm going to be out of sight of this camera, sorry. In this picture, I put this up here because you'll see the different ethnic groups. We have over here, we have Pakistani, New Guinea, two ladies at the back are from China. This lady here is from the Kingdom of Tonga. This one here is from Jamaica. We have 15 different nationalities within our congregation. Imagine managing all that, you know. And the foods we have are wonderful because we have all these different nationalities and different groups. We celebrate birthdays. Melinda organises once a month. All the ladies get together and they'll have a time together and celebrate birthdays. Of course, we serve. And here's Melinda serving in the kitchen. Melinda teaches the Bible class. She's trying to move out of that more and more as you get older, as we know, and, let the younger ones do it. But we're trying to do this. We're trying to entrust, these to the faithful people. We're trying to pass on the word and deposit that into the hearts of to the family and to the younger ones. Back in 1987, we started, two other brothers and me started the Men's Challenge, and that's been going now since 1987. Wonderful time for brothers together for 4 days, and we try and study with together, we try to fellowship together. It unites us, and we get brothers come from Australia, from the bottom of our country. We've even had them come in from the islands for this time together of 4 days of a men's leadership retreat. We have a Bible college, started in 1982. I went through it in 1983 and 84, and still goes. We reach people into the Pacific Islands and also up into the areas of Thailand, etc. And when they come, we pray for them, and when they enter into our school, we get them up in front of the congregation and pray for them. And of course, we want them to graduate at the end of that after 2 years. One of the things I do is we mentor some of the men, and this is a man from Tonga, and I've been mentoring him, and he's now gone and started a church in the South Island. And here's Michael, mentoring him. We enjoy our children, we get them up front before they go to classes, and they sing to the congregation, and we have a great time watching them grow. We're trying to raise up new song leaders. These are our new song leaders here being developed, and we get them up there and they'll help lead singing. Still trying to deposit this into the hearts of the young ones. We take them on mission trips, and so what we do, we prepare them for a month. We're going off to a smaller church, and what we want to do is we want to go over and help that smaller church. So they get ready, they've all got a part to play, and then we go off to get them on a bus, and we'll go for an hour and a half or an hour to another smaller church where we can encourage that smaller church. And it's great for the kids. Already they're starting to feel the mission, and so that's what we do with them, and we get them on the bus and away we go. This lady here, Shuli, was baptized a couple of years ago, last year, and she came from Indonesia. She came over, and her family, her grandparents or her grandmother was a witch. And so she's come out of that history, and she wanted to find Christ. And so when she met this lady here, our Jamaican sister, at a badminton class, they were playing badminton, they struck up a relationship, and guess what happened? Shirley got baptized into Christ, and she's a wonderful sister. Got 4 children. She brings her children along to worship, even though perhaps her husband's against us right now, she brings them along, and it's wonderful to see. This lady here I met, she was, I baptized a lady, her daughter-in-law, a number of years ago, and she wrote to me and said, "Chris, can you study with my mother-in-law? She's dying of cancer." And so I studied with her, and 3 months later, Diane died of cancer, but we entered into Christ. Corbin here, Corbin was a guy I met at the gym, and we just brushed by each other, have a quick chat. And then one Saturday, I happened to go down to the gym. I never go to the gym on a Saturday, nor does he. And he was down at the gym, and there was nobody else at the gym. And I started to have this chat to him, and I asked him, I said, what's your core beliefs? What do you believe? What motivates you? He said, well, I'm into Eastern religions. And I said, well, that's interesting. He said, what about you? And I said, well, I'm a creationist. I believe there's one God who creates all. And he said, that's interesting. And I said, and he started to ask questions. So I said, why don't we go and get a coffee together? And so we went down and we had a coffee together. And so from there, it eventuated into a Bible study. And Corbin now, let me tell you, Corbin's growing rapidly. He takes Bibles to his friends. He drives 2.5 hours to his friends in Auckland, the large city where he's got a lot of his mates, and he takes Bibles to his family. He's wanting to share his faith. He said, I'm going to write up a tract, Chris, when you're away. I'm going to write up a little tract that I can give to people. And I said, well, let me have a look at it first, and so when I get back, we'll check it out. And he's writing that up right now. But he wants to share his faith, and it's exciting to see. There's Derek on the far right-hand side there. Derek was walking by about 7 years ago. He'd walk his dog by, and I decided to join him. And over a period of time, we chatted. Now, Derek's done very well financially with his businesses. But I challenged Derek, why don't you read your Bible? Why don't you buy a Bible and read it? He said, well, I have a Bible. And I said, why don't you read it sometime? Well, one day I turn up, this is last year, turn up and Derek says, you know what, Chris, I've been reading my Bible. And me and my wife, and it's changing my life. Would you come up to my house? I said, yep, I'll come up to his house. And you can see his house way up high with this beautiful, swimming pool that overlooks the bay, And so there I am, we're up there, and I studied with his family. And that day I said, I'm leaving, but I said, do you want to be baptized into Christ after we'd studied? And he says, I do. And so did his stepdaughter. And so both of them were baptized into Christ that day. And that was just me getting out there and walking with this guy, It's just going out and meeting a guy at the gym. It's all those little things. Conversation. People are looking for conversation, and that's all it's about. This is a young guy here. He's come from Tonga, and we end up having a Bible study. He met one of our young ladies from America, and now they've got a child, and they're living in Florida. So there's a connection there. Amazing how it goes round, isn't it? And so the second part of my arm is simply this. And that's to other congregations and other leaders. I try and get with leaders. We're in a remote part of the world. So I'm trying to always get with leaders and encourage them. This is the particular picture here is with my brother. He has a group of men that he gets together every 2 weeks. And he said, would you come and teach these men? So I go up there and he opens it up and I have an opportunity to have a Bible study with these different guys from different walks of life. This is in the South Island. This is one of the early churches. In 1844, the Church of Christ began in New Zealand. And this is the town it actually began in. Now, you might look at the guy there. Looks as if he's been around a while, the guy with the beard, doesn't he? But, this is a great little church. There are a lot of sisters here trying to live their faith in a remote part of the country, in a remote part of the world. I get to go to Australia sometimes. There's 2 congregations in Melbourne, Australia. I go over there and I encourage the brethren. I stay for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and encourage the brethren over there because they need encouraging. One of these churches here is a new group. The one on the right here is a new church that started, and I go and encourage them. I go up into Queensland, Australia, the Gold Coast as you call it, and they have a little conference. I go up and speak up there sometimes. The Kingdom of Tonga. If you've got the New Zealand, you've got the Tongan Islands, the Fiji, Tonga Islands up above us, and we get an opportunity to go up and encourage those brethren and be with them. And we support some of these guys here, like this brother here. We support them up in Tonga. Recently, Tonga had a tsunami that went through. We decided that we wanted to help them financially, so we got some barrels together, put some food together, and a number of different things, and sent these barrels to that country in order to help them. And this is my little family here that we've received some of the goods. And Melinda and I contributed to that too. We wanted to help towards that. This dear sister and her husband, they are down in Napier. She's originally from New Guinea, and she's down there labouring with her husband in the little congregation down in Napier, about 4.5 hours from where I live. When I was down there, I baptised Ken 27 years ago. He came back to the Lord, and it's exciting because he's returned back, and it's exciting to have him back. This is Paula, the guy that I'd been mentoring. He's now in the South Island, and he's trying to reach out to all the apple pickers, the kiwi fruit pickers. Most of them are island people, and he's trying to gather a little gathering in there, trying to bring them, because they've got roots many times in different religious backgrounds, but since they've left their country, they drift. So he's trying to get and teach them and get an opportunity to bring them to Christ. So he's down there labouring at the moment in that part of the world. When I'm in the South Island, I get with this little group way down in the south, and it's a little farming community, and here we are. They decide to get me every time I go down there. They want to put me to work because they know I'm from a farming background, and this is docking, tailing. We take off the tails off the lambs. And so we get down there, and he has a farm about 1,000 acres, and a lot of sheep, and we get down there and do some docking. He gets me working. But it's wonderful to be fellowshipping with him at the same time. And then we have this little band of brothers. Every year I get some brothers together from the bottom of the South Island. We have a little retreat. One of the brothers owns a beautiful little holiday house up by the lake, and he says, why don't we use that? So we go down there, and we have 12 brothers who gather, and we have a time together in the Word. Recently, when I was in Huntington Beach, when I baptised my granddaughter, they have a youth group, and they said, would you like to come over and teach the youth group? So I went over and had an opportunity to teach the youth group. So God takes us all sorts of places. It's amazing. When you just make yourself available, God will put you into different situations. And so lastly, I just want to say the last part to this third part of the arm is I communicate with congregations, but especially leaders. And that many times can be in different locations. We use, of course, Zoom. We've been forced into that these days, and Skype, but we use that as an opportunity to teach people. And I have studies with people in all different locations. This is Bobby. I use actually text a lot with Bobby. He's in the Fiji Islands. Our church supports Bobby, and we're presently helping him. Here he is about to baptize this couple here on your right-hand side. And he's doing a great work up in the Fiji Islands. This couple here on the far left, they are up in the Philippines, and we're in contact with them, and we encourage them in their work. I get with this guy here. He's in Santiago, Chile. It's Pablo. And I teach him on every second Thursday we have a Bible study. And it's amazing. He says, I take what you teach me, Chris. I gather other preachers together and I teach them, and they go and teach others. So it's exciting to see the passing on that's taking place. So that's really what we're about. But really we're all trying to be lighthouses, aren't we? We're trying to be this light to the world. Our coastline is 9,500 miles, and they've got these lighthouses. So when Melinda and I travel around our country, we'll try and find these remote lighthouses. And what they do is they remind me that I need to be a light. I need to be a light. And I want to say that to you. You need to be a light in your community too, because right now God's got somebody out there that wants the gospel. And God's got a plan for them to bring them to you. You just be praying about it, looking for those opportunities. I want to say sometimes too, our light can go out. It can get a little dull. And I encourage you, if you're getting a little dull, get with your brothers and sisters. We'll even pray for you tonight to say, help me with this. Help me to be a little bolder. Help me to have be a little bit more courageous in sharing my faith. Because the world needs it, as we know. So, with that, that's all I have. I was going to say if there was going to be any questions, but you want to do a song. Do you have any questions? I've run fairly fast over that, and I didn't want to keep you. Got kids here tonight and so forth. Any questions?
How did you greet each other during the pandemic?
We did. You didn't do the hongi. Yeah, probably the Maoris did in their private setting, but generally yeah, very much so. Yeah, no, true. Lead us in a song. Thank you. Thanks for